Lala Har Dayal was an Indian nationalist revolutionary who founded the Ghadar Party in America. He was a polymath who turned down a career in the Indian Civil Service. His simple living and intellectual acumen inspired many expatriate Indians living in Canada and the USA to fight against British imperialism during the First World War. Biography. Early years. He was born as a Dalit. At an early age he was influenced by Arya Samaj. He was associated with Shyam Krishna Varma, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar and Bakaji Karma. He also drew inspiration from Giuseppe Mazzini, Karl Marx and Mikhail Bakunin. He was, according to Emily Brown as quoted by Jürgen Smyer, in sequence an atheist, a revolutionary, a Buddhist, and a pacifist. He studied at the Cambridge Mission School and received his bachelor's degree in Sanskrit from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, India, and his master's degree also in Sanskrit from Punjab University. In 1905, he received 2 scholarships of Oxford University for his higher studies in Sanskrit, Bowdoin Scholarship 1907 and Casbird Exhibitioner, and award from St. John's College where he was studying. In a letter to the Indian sociologist published in 1907, he started to explore anarchist ideas, arguing that our object is not to reform government, but to reform its way, leaving, if necessarily, only nominal traces of its existence. The letter led to him being put under surveillance by the police. Later that year, saying "to hell with the ICS," he gave up the prestigious Oxford scholarships and returned to India in 1908 to live a life of austerity. But in India too, he started writing harsh articles in the leading newspapers. When the British government decided to impose a ban upon his writing, Lala Lajpat Ray advised him to leave and go abroad. It was during this period that he came into the friendship of the anarchist Ghadar, who was put on trial for printing the Indian Sociologist. He moved to Paris in 1909 and became editor of the Vande Mataram. But he was not very happy in Paris, so he left Paris and moved to Algeria. There too, he was unhappy and wondering whether to go either to Cuba or Japan. After all, he went to Martinique, where he started living a life of austerity. An Arya Samaj missionary by Parmenon went there to look for him, and found him lonely and isolated. The two discussed founding a new religion modeled on Buddhism. Har Dayal was living an ascetic life, eating only boiled grain and potatoes, sleeping on the floor and meditating in a secluded place. Ghadar later related that this religion's motto was to be atheism, cosmopolitanism and moral law. Emily Brown and Erik Erikson have described this as a crisis of ego identity for him. Parmenon says that Har Dayal agreed to go to the United States to propagate the ancient culture of the Aryan race. Har Dayal went straight from Boston to California, where he wrote an idyllic account of life in the United States. He then moved on to Honolulu in Hawaii, where he spent some time meditating on Waikiki Beach. During his stay he made friends with Japanese Buddhists. He also started studying the works of Karl Marx. Whilst here, he wrote some phases of contemporary thought in India, subsequently published in Modern Review. Parmenon persuaded him by letter to return to California. Anarchist activism in America. He moved to the United States in 1911, where he became involved in industrial unionism. He had also served as secretary of the San Francisco branch of the Industrial Workers of the World alongside Fritz Wolfheim. In a statement outlining the principles of the Fraternity of the Red Flag, he said they proposed the establishment of communism and the abolition of private property in land and capital through industrial organization and the general strike, ultimate abolition of the coercive organization of government. A little over over a year later, this group was given 6 acres of land and a house in Oakland, where he founded the Acumen Institute of California, which he described as the first monastery of anarchism. The organization aligned itself with the regeneration movement founded by the exiled Mexicans Ricardo and Enrique Flores Magón. He had a designated post of a lecturer in Indian philosophy and Sanskrit at Leland Stanford University. However, he was forced to resign because of embarrassment about his activities in the anarchist movement. He had developed contacts with Indian American farmers in Stockton, California. Having developed an Indian nationalist perspective, he encouraged young Indians to gain a scientific and sociological education. With the personal help of Teja Singh, Tarak Nath Das and Arthur Pope and funding from Jala Singh, a rich farmer from Stockton, he set up Guru Govind Singh Sahib Educational Scholarship for Indian students. With Shyamji Krishnavarma's India House in London, he established his house as a home for these students. Amongst the 6 students who responded to the offer were Nan Singh Sara, Dari C. Chenkar and Gobind Bihari Lal, his wife's cousin. They lived together in a rented apartment close to the University of California, Berkeley. Assassination attempt on Viceroy of India at the time. He was still a vigorous anarchist propagandist and had very little to do with the nationalist Nalanda Club, composed of Indian students. However, Basanta Kumar Biswa's attempt on the life of the Indian Viceroy, Lord Hardinge, on December 23, 1912 had a major impact upon him. He visited the Nalanda Club hostel to tell them this news at dinner. He delivered a rousing lecture, which ended with the following couplet of the Urdu poet Mir Taqi Mir of Delhi: Pagari Apani Sabla Yega Mir, Au Basti Nathan Ye Dilli Hai. Take care of your turban, Mr. Mir. This is not just any town, this is Delhi, India. Okay. The hostel then became a party with dancing and the singing of Vande Mataram. Hardayal excitedly told his anarchist friends of what one of his men had done in India. He quickly brought out a pamphlet called the Yuganta Circular, in which he eulogized about the bombing. Hail! 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 Harbinger of hope and courage, Reawakner of slumbering souls, concentrated moral dynamite, the Esperanto of revolution. Who can describe the moral power of the bomb? It is concentrated moral dynamite. When the strong and cunning in the pride of the power parade their glory before the helpless victims. When the rich and naughty set themselves on a pedestal and ask their slaves to fall down before them and worship them. When the wicked ones on the earth seem exalted to the sky and nothing appears to withstand the might, then in the dark hour, for the glory of humanity, comes the bomb, which lays the tyrant in the dust. It tells all the cowering slaves that he who sits enthroned as God is a mere man like them. Then, in the Tower of Shame, a bomb preaches the eternal truth of human equality and sends proud superiors and viceroys from the palace and the howdah to the grave and the hospital. Then, in the tense moment, when human nature is ashamed of itself, the bomb declares the vanity of power and pomp and redeems us from our own baseness. How great we feel when someone does the heroic deed. We share in his moral power. We rejoice in his assertion of human equality and dignity. Quote, in April 1914, he was arrested by the United States government for spreading anarchist literature and fled to Berlin, Germany. He subsequently lived for a decade in Sweden. He received his Ph.D. degree in 1930 from the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. In 1932, he got his book Hints for Self-Culture published and embarked on a lecture circuit covering Europe, India, and the United States. He died in Philadelphia on March 4, 1939. In the evening of his death he delivered a lecture as usual where he had said, "I am in peace with all," but a very close friend of Lala Har Dayal and the founder member of Bharat Martyr Society, Lala Har did not accept the death as natural. He suspected it as poisoning. In 1987, the India Department of Posts issued a commemorative stamp in his honor, within the series of India's Struggle for Freedom Appreciations. According to Swami Ramatirtha, Lala Har Dayal was the greatest Hindu who ever came to America, a great sage and saint, whose life mirrored the highest spirituality as his soul reflected the love of the universal spirit whom he tried to realize. In another appreciation, Professor Dharmavira has sketched the picture of Lala Har Dayal which is being quoted here in verbatim. Har Dayal dedicated his whole life to the sacred cause of the motherland. Surely from such a person alone could one ask, "Good Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" Let us drink deep at this spring and wax glad and strong and brave in every nerve and fiber of our being. He was one of the race of those who wrote the new era in blood. His course was laborious, truthful, simple, independent, noble, and all these in an eminent degree. His experience of the inward and the outward battle was not inconsiderable, and it was not confined to his early manhood, but was spread over his whole life. Lala Har Dayal had the Janak and Dadichi touch, and his life demonstrated that he had what it takes.